Hi, Monique.
Hey Molly,
How's it going?
it's awesome. It's weird to be back in my home office loft at
What's
home. Yeah,
that? A lot of wood?
yeah, lots of wood, and actually ironwork by Bradford by Rich Franklin.
Oh, that's incredible. I would say my home office is not quite so elaborate, but we did put up our sign, so
I
that's
love
nice.
it.
Well, thanks so much for
Yeah,
being willing to chat for a bit today. I've been trying to figure out how to connect with people around the state and get a sense of how everyone's responding to COVID-19. And I know that Bradford's been doing a ton, and you're such an incredible leader, not only in Bradford and Orange County, but throughout the Upper Valley. So just wanted to talk to you about
yeah.
what's happening, what you're seeing, what's going on. Tell us what's going on in Bradford.
Yeah, so actually like statewide, it's really interesting. Actually nationwide, it's been really interesting. But so in Bradford, um, I wasn't here during Irene, so I didn't know if the town had any type of like emergency response set up at all. And you know how many like things I'm involved with, so that's the first thing that came to mind. And so I had been added to a Facebook group, the How Can I Help Prepare Facebook group, where organizers from all over Vermont were just scrambling, trying to figure out like their role in all of this. And so I wanted to know what the town's role was, and asked like the select board and the emergency management director, yeah, if we had a plan, which, and if we were like getting the community all rallied up to like, you know, go to the streets or whatever. And there wasn't like, they're used to having to respond to like floods and hurricanes and all that kind of stuff, storms. So they were thankful for somebody else to like jump in and help with coordinate community efforts. So we've been, let's see, we're calling our group Bradford Resilience, which, yeah, I just threw it on there, but it's working. And so there's 30 people meeting weekly across like, we basically I broke it up into like 12 teams. So we have like a transportation team, food access, healthcare and mental health access, the seniors and adults with differing abilities, schools, libraries, town and state government reporting out. And so, yeah, so we've been meeting weekly, and then there's this whole other coordinated like volunteer effort. We've got 75 volunteers from Bradford. There was over 100 volunteers from like Corinth, Newbury, Topsom, Reigate, Fairleigh. Yeah, and so we've been meeting weekly with volunteers as well, and that's been really cool. And like both groups.
How are you meeting? Are you meeting
Zoom.
by Zoom?
Yep.
So there's how many different groups?
So there's basically one overarching group that's broken into like 12 subgroups of like 4 to 5 people.
Okay.
And so that meets, and then there's basically point people that I assign to each of those subgroups. And
Yep.
we all get on a call and the point people report out. They have 3 minutes. So we've been making our calls under an hour, which is great.
Efficient. Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing. And is everyone able right now to log in to Zoom for the most part? There's been a lot of conversations around the state about broadband, and I think we're realizing more and more, as you know, there's that stretch between Barrie and Bradford when you're driving home. If you're coming from this side of the state, that can be kind of problematic sometimes. And I know that what we're seeing now more than ever is that if you don't have broadband, you don't have access to information. It's hard to coordinate relief. Obviously, there's challenges around online learning and education and telemedicine. The list goes on. But how is that impacting your ability to coordinate at all?
Yeah, so I think so some people are calling in from the phone, which is fine because I have like a pro version of Zoom. But they are kind of handicapped in that they can't see the screen and what I'm sharing. And in our case, we have like a bunch of Google Docs and minutes and sheets that I'm showing during the meetings. So that is difficult. I would say the bigger concern though is that the people who are probably the most in need are ones that we're very concerned don't have internet access. The school every week is reporting out that there's a number of students that don't have access, which means there's so many other families that maybe don't have kids that also don't have access and that we don't even know who they are. So that's definitely a big hurdle. as far as just making sure that we're reaching the right people and reaching the people who need it the most. So where there's a number of ways we're kind of trying to address that. One, we did a mailer, like a 8.5 by 11 sheet that went out to every mailbox in town. And then we're actually working on some yard signs that we're going to stick on even like the back roads. That basically just has the website and a Google Voice number for people to call. So definitely working on it, but it's a major concern that the people who can't, like Little River switched to telehealth. They're triaging people. You really can't go to the clinics right now. So, and unless you.
So the lawn signs, which is such a great idea. Do those include information on how to reach basic services for those folks who can't go online, or?
Yeah, so what we did was it has like the town website and then a Google Voice number that people can call, and it just has like volunteer or request help, and so people can contact us that way. And then the town website has like a COVID page.
Okay. And where are you getting all these ideas from? Are you coordinating with other communities statewide? Because these are like,
yeah. I mean, everybody. So like our little volunteer group is, so we've broken the volunteer effort. So it's like 75 people, but 10 of them are like team leads. And so they each have 10 people underneath them. So we have a call every week. And so they came up with a lot of the lawn signs. The mailer actually came from, we're working with Vermont Council on Rural Development statewide to kind of provide tools to community organizers all over the state. And so Catherine Sims did like a postcard mailer in Craftsbury. And so I used part of that and then part of other stuff that other towns were doing. Yeah.
That's terrific. So where do you see right now is the greatest need?
Not
that we should put a hierarchy on things, but I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like there's an incredible response effort. There's tons of volunteers. You know, what's the most challenging for you guys?
So I think number one is making sure that people are actually reaching the people who need help, because across the state, the biggest thing that any group is saying that they have a ton of volunteers. They've been putting out their surveys, most of which are online, but they're not getting any need requests. And there's no way that people don't need help right now. And that's across.
So why is that? What do you mean by that?
So I think it's a number of things. One, I think it's messaging, and people, like we keep saying, it's the people that are the most vulnerable or elderly, and not everybody considers themselves vulnerable or elderly or want to consider themselves that way. And so I think messaging is a big issue, but also, are we even reaching them? Like, do they get mail at their house? Do they have a phone? Do they have internet? Like, they might not. And so some towns are working on like either ground efforts of actually going door to door physically, or phone trees, which we haven't started a phone tree here yet. I think so two other things that were, I guess three other things that like came up, which would be interesting to see if the state came up with a future solution for this, is that funding. Like, we're in the town, in every town, we're not allowed to create like a town fund. So we don't have an emergency fund. It has to be set up at town meeting. Obviously, we can't wait until a town meeting to have an emergency fund.
There's no sort of executive order for towns to create their own emergency fund, or for the.
Right, it has to be like voted on by the town. Yeah, so some groups are like New England Grassroots Environmental has like some emergency funds, and they were kind of giving people step by step on how to just create like a community organization with an EIN number. It's not necessarily they said it might not be recognized at all small banks, which we have here.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I found a
savings bank.
Exactly. So I found like a community trust that I think we're going to end up going with from a different town that created that trust because they have the same issue for other projects and receiving grants. And
then money could be donated there, and then basically earmarked for Bradford or community and various projects.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So that's still a big need for like everybody. And probably the other biggest thing that any of the organizations are running into is liability issues, and whether or not like it's not necessarily recommended that towns cover volunteers under like officially under their town, but like in Bradford, like they still want the mailer to be on behalf of the town, even though it's technically the smaller group, but like, but they do want the volunteers, but they're concerned about liability. And so that's the
Right.
same everywhere. Luckily, I think Bradford is actually it's looking at making the Bradford Resilience an official commission or some type of organized group.
Mandated and
Yeah.
recognized group.
Yep.
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 That's perfect. Wow.
Yeah.
So what comes next? I mean, in the next, 2 or 3 weeks, things are going to change, I think, pretty rapidly here in Vermont, and we know that. And the governor's been briefing the state pretty regularly. And how are you gearing up on a local level in terms of providing support, and what are you guys focusing on?
Yeah, so I think it's all those, just getting those pieces in place. So still trying to get the funding mechanism in place, still trying to get the liability figured out. Still trying to work on like a waiver that's acceptable for volunteers to have to sign off. But then, so we have the volunteers in place. We're just getting kind of the team structure in place. And other than that, it's really just making sure we have needs. So making sure we are reaching every resident, which I still don't know how we're going to accomplish that, but we need to. So,
yeah. Well, maybe there's, radio, WYKR, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
It's a credible resource and network, and I'm sure you're using Front Porch Forum, but
yeah.
I guess, my last question for you really relates to where Bradford fits into, and I guess the surrounding towns kind of fit into what's happening statewide right now. And I think what we know is that there are so many people at the local level like you who are doing incredible work. I think the same kind of work that happened after Irene, but obviously this is a lot different, and the needs are different, and the needs are going to last for quite some time, especially the economic needs. And I guess, if you had to send a message to the rest of the state about kind of what you're doing and what resources to share, or just, what has made for a good response effort, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the main thing, and something that I'm trying to keep in mind even for Bradford, is that people are working on this. Like, I think a lot of people are concerned that there isn't anything going on if they're not immediately connected to it. So Bradford is just one town, but every town is working on this, and you may not see it yet, but it is happening. And many towns are trying to add things to their town websites. So I think in general, just having people try to be a little bit more aware, and go to their town website just to see if there is something. If there isn't, maybe ask if there is something in progress, and try to engage in that way. Vermont is great. I mean, as far as the towns individually are figuring things out, and then network-wide, statewide are figuring it out. We're just getting to the point, I think, where the kind of like unauthorized leaders like myself are stepping up, and then trying to make sure that we're connecting to municipal leaders and the emergency management directors, and even the state departments, to make sure that everyone is on the same page.
Same page, yeah, absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for your time, and hopefully we can talk again soon. And I just, I think you're incredible. You're such a rock star in the community, and I think it's so important to talk about what you're doing and what Bradford's doing, and we're going to continue to do that in the weeks and months ahead. And I think on the other side of this, once we do get through this, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to share lessons learned, and I hope I can call you back and we can talk about, okay, where do we go from here, and what is the go forward for Vermont, because there will be a lot we can do, and a lot of challenges still, but a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Talk to you soon.
All
Stay
right.
well,
Bye,
stay healthy, stay connected.
All right, you too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.